Okay, so let's go ahead and get started putting together our owl lantern. And it's actually quite simple. What we're going to do is, as always, I like to work on things that are flat first, if possible. So you'll notice that we have 4 of these that look very similar. And in fact, they're pretty much identical, minus the fact that this has a little tab on it. Okay, and this is going to be our structure piece. This piece is going to go over this piece once we have the structure all together. But we may as well get some prep work done, kind of get our feet wet a little bit, and get our just kind of get used to putting our glue down, making sure that we're comfortable with our pressure, and just kind of practicing a little bit on some stuff that is, well, almost fail-proof. So I'm going to take, and on the back of this, I'm going to go ahead and begin gluing. We're going to glue this to the green piece that's just below it. Now this is a new bottle of glue for me, so I have to be pretty delicate with my pressure here until, and I've actually discovered that a kind of broken in bottle of glue that's slightly, I don't know, clogged, I guess, or just has not as free of a flow. I actually like that kind of bottle better, but eventually I got to start a new one. I was kind of refilling bottles there for a little bit, but for this video I just grabbed a new one because I knew I wouldn't have to mess around with cleaning it. Okay, so anyway, get my glue on the back of this, and we're just going to lay this down right onto this piece here. I'm going to lift this up and just kind of run my fingers along the edges here in the bottom, just making sure that I've got it nice and perfectly lined up. Okay, there we go. Now this brown piece does slightly extend over the green piece. It's very subtle, but that is what that is going to look like. You do want to make sure that you don't have any green sticking out around the perimeter. Okay. Okay, so we're going to let that set, and we can go ahead and do the same thing to the other one. So we'll just get some of this easy stuff out of the way, and then we'll begin with our assembly. Like I said, just want to kind of get our feet wet and get used to squeezing the glue and putting it on and kind of getting in that zone, that Zen mode zone. Now I did do a little bit of inking beforehand, and I'll show you where. But again, you know, depending on the papers that you use and the tones that you use, you may not need to ink. So it all depends on what papers you're using. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and lay that down. I'm looking visually at the top by the ears just to make sure that I'm lining it up as nicely as possible. And I'll go ahead and lift this up. And a little excess glue up there, that's fine. And that looks good. I'll flip it around, make sure that it looks pretty even going all the way around, which it does. And that looks great. I'll push that down. All right. So I've got the 2 sides all together here. We're just going to let these set and just kind of put them on top of each other. Not much pressure there, but that's fine. Okay, so next thing, next little piece that we can kind of work to get, or pre-prep here, is this little decorative leaf that we're going to put on our little handle. Now I took this and I embossed it, but I also inked the edges of it, and I embossed it with a crackle embossing folder that we actually used on one of our Halloween projects. So anyway, now that is a ridiculous amount of glue. As I mentioned, this new bottle sometimes is just not used to the flow, but we're going to take this and we're going to glue it right onto, this is the overlay for the little red piece that's just below it. You want to make sure that you're getting your glue out to the little tips there, just to make sure that those don't peel back. And do your best to get that nice and centered on your piece here. And just push that down and let that set. Yeah, see what I mean? I had a little too much glue come out of there, but it dries clear, so it'll be fine. But if you can, definitely rub away some of that excess glue so you don't get too much of a shine or a sheen to it. Okay, so this piece is pretty much ready to go. This back piece is going to go between the handle. Okay, so you can hot glue or just glue that. The handle is going to go between this. This is going to kind of hold the leaf in place. So you can take these two pieces and just put those off to the side, as we won't be needing those right now. I did take the eyeballs and I did ink those in a brown. This is like a rogue color. We don't need those just yet. Put those to the side. There are some little donuts here that we're going to use to reinforce where the handles go. I didn't really do anything special to those. So really, at this point, we can go ahead and begin putting this thing together. All right, so with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to find all of our green pieces here. Now there's two squares. These squares are going to be the bottom. These are going to be the structural sides of the front and back. And then, of course, we have the actual sides of our little bag, if you will. It's also a lantern. You can put a little gift in it, and then your recipient can use it as a little luminary, a little piece of home decor, whatever they see fit. Okay, so what I'm doing is, this is going to be the top. The top is going to kind of stick out like this a little bit, and this is going to be nice and round. So I did just fold those in. I'm going to unfold them, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dowel and I'm going to slightly, just very slightly, and you can do it this way too, curl this, okay, because it is going to be kind of curled a little bit. I just wanted to give it a little bit of a curl. Once we actually glue it in place, it will naturally take on a curling or curved look and angle. But I didn't want to risk bending it or creasing it. So you see what I did there? I just had my dowel on my table. This is a 3/8 inch dowel, and I'm just holding this down. And depending on the angle that you pull this at, that's going to determine just how much angle or curve it gives it. So I'm just kind of going at a 45-degree angle, and as you can see, it gives me a nice curve there. The paper doesn't get creased, and it is pretty much ready to apply to our structure here. So let's go ahead and just do that one more time here. And I've got my texture side out, okay? So again, I'm just gonna go ahead and take this, this part actually, right. So I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna run it along like that just to give it a little bit of a curve, okay? And then I'm gonna do the same thing with this piece here. And that just kind of gives it a little bit of a curve. Nothing crazy, just a tiny little bit. And then you can go ahead and fold all these little teeth here. Okay, let's fold those in, get them ready for assembly. And this guy is going to go together rather quickly. Also, there are some panels, some overlay panels that go on the side of our owl. And those two, you're going to want to kind of train just so that when you apply them, they don't bend or fold. Now this, I believe, is a Cartabella paper, which I did ink in a brown, and it is way thicker than my AC cardstock. AC cardstock's about 80 pound. I want to say this is at least 100. Okay, so this may be a little more difficult to train. Okay, what I would do is just start with just a very delicate bend and just kind of pushing it against the dowel just to kind of give it a little bit of a bend. And the thicker the paper, the more obvious it may be if you try to train the paper that it doesn't just kind of create a nice round effect. This may look more like it was sort of creased, but I think I did a pretty good job on that. And again, it's just because of the thickness of the paper. It is a little bit harder to train that sort of paper without creasing it. So I'm just doing it very gently. And once you break the fibers down, you can train it even more without worrying about creasing it. Okay, but that looks pretty good. I got a good angle on that. And this one, of course, we're going to need to train this one a lot more because it requires a lot more of a bend. But I'm just going to be real gentle with it, and as long as I'm getting a little bit of a curve on it, it should be fine. And that's probably good. The rest of it will actually sit in place with the glue. The glue will stick it down, but it's just really difficult sometimes to take a flat piece of paper and make it stick to a surface that is slightly curved. So that's why we want to train it a little bit. Now, again, you probably may need, excuse me. Now you may not even need to do this because you may not be using this paper, and yours may just be 80 pound, and you can just train it like this, like I usually do. But anyway, just a little tip there. So with that said, what we can go ahead and begin doing is putting this guy together, okay? And the system that we devised here, we've made it so that you can actually glue the tabs to the face of the structural piece here. And as you can see, it fits perfectly. And with something like this, I do like to kind of work one tab at a time, especially at the tips, at the tops, and at the bottoms, just to make sure that I'm getting everything nice and perfectly aligned. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by putting way too much glue on this first tab, which I don't advise you do, because then the underside of your table is going to look like mine. And if I still lived at home with Mom, she'd probably kill me for putting glue under the table. But all right, so we want to go ahead, and what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that this piece here, as it curves and hits this little center point, that it's in the right spot, okay? And it is. So I know that I'm gluing this top tab in place correctly, okay? And now this is a pretty important tab up here, so just make sure that you give it ample time to dry before you move on to the next tab. It's really holding a lot of weight right now, okay? And then you can kind of, and as you can see there, the weight was just too much, okay? So if you want, you can do this flat on your table. It may actually be easier that way because then you're not dealing with gravity or any sort of force being applied to this tab to make it come undone. So I'll show you what I mean. So now this is face down, and I'm just kind of wrapping it in there, pushing that little corner in there, and then just pushing down in here, just to make sure that I've got it lined up properly. And then you just push, give that a few seconds to set. Okay, and then we're just going to work our way down the design just to make sure that everything stays nicely for us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and probably just do 3 tabs at a time. You just need a tiny little dot of glue. You don't need a lot. Don't overdo it because then it takes forever for that glue to dry. I'm just popping it over. I'm going to put it down on my surface and push in again, making sure that it's hugging that structural piece there. And I'm just going to run my finger and add pressure to those 3 little tabs that I put glue on. And take a look there. You can see that they're holding on nicely. Okay, so just kind of trying to hold everything in place here. And I'm going to put glue on these next 2 tabs here. You can see them on the, there's a pretty good contrast on the gray there. Okay, let's flip them in. Put this down on our table. Again, just making sure that you are pushing in from the outside and down from the inside here. And that this nice angle here meets at the angle here on this structural piece. Now once we get this in place, the rest of it's going to be a breeze because this is being held in place very nicely and securely. Okay, so give that a few seconds to dry, and there you go. Okay, so I'm going to be confident here, and I'm going to flip these tabs up, And I'm gonna do, oh, I don't know, let's do like 5 at a time. I think we can do 5 at a time. Just a little dot, don't need a lot. And when you push that down, it's going to kind of spread out more too. So I know that we just have a little dot there, but as we push down, it will kind of spread its way around and cover a lot of that area. You'd be surprised how much a little dot will cover. Okay, so I'm just kind of pushing down with this finger here, just making sure that those tabs sit on there nicely, which they are. Okay, so again, the little face portion of this that we're going to put down is going to cover all of this up, and it's going to hide anything that maybe we messed up on. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next 5 here. And just fold those in slightly, put this down on my surface, and I'm pushing in from the outside there and pushing down with this finger here that you see moving. Really applying a good amount of pressure just to make sure that that glue spreads out and penetrates into those fibers of the paper so that it really holds securely. Okay, so that's looking good. And I am feeling so confident right now with this, as you should as well, that I'm going to go ahead and just put glue on the rest of these tabs. And I'm going to glue all these down right now. Okay, let's fold them in just a little bit. Again, don't worry about the surface of this. It's going to be covered up by the panel. Okay, so hold that in place. It should meet perfectly with the bottom there. And push in from the outside, push down on those tabs, and let's just wait until that's fully set. Okay, give that a few seconds to dry. All right, and there you go. That looks perfect. Okay, so anybody want to guess what we're going to do next? Well, if you guess that we're going to do the same thing with this side, you guessed correctly. And the process is pretty much identical. And then when we're done, we're going to take this and pop it inside, and we're just going to glue that to this side as well. So this process is going to get a little monotonous, but that's okay. I'm going to walk you through this again, just because it's how I roll. So we're going to put just a little bit of glue on this first initial tab here, the most important tab. And let me see what angle will be best for you. Okay, I'm focusing on this little corner here, making sure that that's nice and aligned. And then I'm going to push this up here and really hold this in place, making sure that that has a nice strong bond. Okay. So keep holding that down. That's going to be the anchor that holds this all together so that the gluing is that much easier when we get there to the next tabs. Okay, so again, this is a little bit of a delicate piece, so be very careful. Just make sure that you don't tug on it too much. Let's just get the next 3 tabs here. So I'm going to put this like so. Let's get our next 3 tabs in place. Let's fold these down, put this down on our surface, and push in from the outside, push down from the inside, and really hug that curve. Okay. That should be enough time there. And we've got 2 more. And then again, once we get that ear portion all glued, the rest of it goes a lot easier. Okay, so there's my glue. I'm going to fold these over, put this down on my surface, and just glue that in place. Just like that. This is a quick little project, relatively speaking. Great little hostess gift maybe, home decor. If you're doing a fall themed wedding or something, you can make for a really cute centerpiece that you don't have to spend all that much time on. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and work our way down these set of teeth here. Again, I'm just doing dots. This is just a structural piece. Don't have to worry too much about getting things all perfect with edges and corners and yada yada. Okay, and again, just kind of pushing from this side here, pushing down from the inside, just to make sure that that's all hugging that curve nicely. Okay, push that in. And the more you push, the faster it's going to dry because it's really getting into those fibers. Okay, that looks great. And again, this is just, it just gets easier as you get to the bottom because the glue is holding nicely. So get your dots on here. And I can already tell that this bottle is getting kind of broken in. It's flowing much nicer. Okay, so I'm just putting that down on my surface. Pushing in from the outside, pushing down from the inside, adding pressure here to get that glue to spread out and set more quickly. There we go. And I probably jumped the gun and maybe rush things a little bit for the sake of making sure you guys don't get bored. So, and here's one that I missed that didn't really stay very well, so I'm going to go in and fix him. And I'm just going to put glue on these remaining 4 teeth here and finish up one side here. We'll fold these teeth over, put this down on our surface, and just push down. Make sure that that hugs nicely. There we go. Beautiful. All right, and we got a tooth that just doesn't want to cooperate, which is okay. I just don't think I was putting pressure on him. That's all. No pressure, tooth. All right. So that looks really nice. Okay. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy and stick him inside the teeth and just do the same exact thing we just did on the other side. Okay, now obviously this is going to stay in place a lot easier for us, but it may be a tiny bit more difficult to work with because of these tabs at the bottom. You're going to kind of want to push these or just fold them out of the way so that you can get your hand in here if you need to. Okay, but that's what we're going to do. So just like we did the first time and the second time, I'm going to go ahead and begin with my little anchor tooth here, this top one. Just going to make sure I don't put too much glue on there. And again, just making sure that I've got him nice and aligned here. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and let's do it this way. I got to reapply my glue here. I kind of waited too long. Okay, let's get our glue on there. And just making sure that, again, we're kind of following that curve. So I'm pushing that angled part in there, and then I'm wrapping this around here, and I'm pushing down on that little anchor point. And again, that's the most important part there as far as getting this thing started. So really take your time and make sure that that does not come apart. So wait twice as long as you would normally wait before moving on to that next tooth. Okay, and it does already help that we already have the curve because the other side's kind of holding it together. So that is going to make life easier for us. And as you can see, that is on there nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and apply glue to the next, I'll just do the next 3, just to make it easy on myself. There we go, and fold those over and put those down on my surface. And I'm just kind of, again, curving this in and pushing down from the inside here to get that to stick nicely. Okay, so got the next 3 in place, which just leaves these last 2 at the top. I'll go ahead and get my glue on there. Put those back onto my surface. And I'm going to show it to you from this side here. Pushing that in, making sure that that part where it changes direction is nice and butted up against the, you can see it there, this part here, just like we did the first time. Okay, so go ahead and just make sure that that glue sets nicely. Okay, there we go. And now just need to finish gluing this up, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then we will pick up at the next step here. Okay, so I have the one side in place, and just leaves one last side here, and I'm going to begin by getting just this one tooth anchored like we did the last 3 times. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm going to put this back down on my surface here. Make sure that you got that piece there that changes angles. We've got it nice and locked in, and then you can push that in place and push down. And just hold that down until we've got it nice and secure. And then the rest of this is it's gonna be a breeze. This is probably the most challenging part of the assembly, but it's definitely not hard. Okay, so go ahead and I'm going to do just the next 3 tabs here, 3 little teeth, and push those down. Put this down on my surface, and again, just pushing in, making sure that I got it right on that curve. So pushing in from this side, pushing down from this side here, really putting a good amount of pressure on there. Okay, there we go. And just the last 2 of the ear part, and then the rest of this is really going to go quickly for us because this thing's already knows where it needs to go. Okay, so just push that down right in place, making sure that you've got it nice and curved there and it's hugging that curve. And just push that down and hold it until it sets. So I think the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to go ahead and put just dots on each of these teeth here to close this up. And I'm doing 5 at a time because I know I can do it. Okay, just putting that down on my surface. And this should be more than enough space for your hand to get in there. And you can actually see through these holes here because we haven't put our vellum down yet. So it should be very easy to see what you're doing, making sure that it's nice and aligned with that curve. All right, looking good so far. Let's get like 5 or 6 more teeth here ready to go. And get our glue. I'm trying to keep my head off camera here. Sometimes that's a difficult task, but we'll get it done. All right, so we got 5 more here. I'm just going to push them down. Get this down on my surface. And again, just pushing in from this side, pushing down with my finger on the inside, or pushing in from the outside, I should say. But I think you get it by now. Okay, and that just leaves 5 more little teeth to get our glue on, and our structure will be complete. Okay, let's push those down, put this down on our surface, and I feel like this way is easier for me. And there we go. All right, so that's it for the assembly of the main structure minus the bottom and the panels and stuff like that. So, and then you've got the little tabs here at the bottom so that we can put the bottom on there. It should sit nice and flat. The tops look perfect. Okay, so we can go ahead and begin working on the next step here. Okay, so let's make this thing nice and structurally sound. We're gonna grab these pieces here. You'll notice that one of them has a little L cut into it. That is our liner. That's gonna go on the inside. It's a little bit smaller. So we're gonna make this our bottom and decide which part is the front, which part is the back. It really doesn't matter, but when I'm gluing parts like this together, I always try to do one side. Well, I always do one side first, and I decide that's the side that's going to be forward facing because usually it is the cleanest looking. Okay, so I'm just spreading that glue out nice and thin, getting it out to the edge there, and then just getting that nice and centered and aligned. Okay, once it's partially set, we can go ahead and put this down on our surface and push down from the inside. Just make sure that's still straight, and it is. So give that a little bit of time to dry. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put glue on the remaining 3 tabs here. Okay. And we're gonna get that bottom glued into place just so that it holds for us nicely while we work on the rest of the little bag / lantern here. And I'm getting a nice line of glue out to the edge. I'm going to spread that thin just to make sure that I'm getting that glue all the way out to the edge here. And keeping it at an angle like this kind of prevents the glue from going over the edge here. Okay, now you don't have to do this. I just do this because I'm OCD and I like things to be super perfect. Okay, so I'm just kind of spreading that thin. I got a little bit of glue that shot out there. That's okay. And we can always go back in and fix this if necessary. Okay, so now what we want to do is kind of push these tabs out so that as we're pushing this down, grabs more of that surface area and just align it as best as you can. You might have to kind of push things in a little bit, push things out, and then push that down. Reach your hand inside and push down on the tabs there. Just make sure that it's got a nice hold. Okay, you can take your dowel and run it like that too if you need to apply some more specific pressure in any of the areas. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Now if I wanted to, let me find my, and I've done this with my Silhouette pick-me-up tool. I have mentioned multiple times that you can do this with a spatula. If you have like an extra spatula sitting around, you can dab a little bit of glue onto the spatula. And if you have some areas that maybe didn't get a really good hold, you can kind of just shove some glue in there and just spread it onto the areas that maybe didn't hold very well, and then just push down and hold that until it sets, and then you'll have a really nice finished off seam that will make your project look perfect. Okay, all right, so to strengthen this even more, you can go ahead and put a little bit of glue. I would put the glue on the actual tabs so it doesn't warp any of the paper, and then just put your liner inside there and push that down, and that will kind of make this thing a little more structurally sound. Okay. All right, so all right, let me move this out of the way so we don't make a mess here. At this point, what we can do is we can put our vellum down. Now we're going to sandwich our vellum on this layer. Okay, so what we want to do is just kind of work the glue around the perimeter of the little cutouts here. You don't want to go too far off. Just kind of work it around the perimeter. Make it nice and thin so that you don't, so it doesn't kind of smear through the openings and onto the vellum where it's visible. Okay, just a little bit of glue here and there. I usually do a dot method for that, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Get that nice and centered. Make sure that you've got all of the openings covered up, and then you can put that down on your surface and just push down. Make sure that it grabs all of that vellum nicely, just like that. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and repeat that process on the other side. So just go ahead and get your glue around the perimeter. I always work on the perimeter first, and then the little nooks and crannies on the inside. Don't ask me why. It's probably another OCD thing. And I can see that I have a little bit of glue that's already drying here, so I'm going to reapply a little bit. I went a little too thin there. And make sure that you are covering up all those little cutouts. And I've got flies galore in here. Had a little Halloween party and left the door open and been swatting flies all day. Okay, so there is our vellum. Got it in place. And at this point, what we can go ahead and do is put our little face on here. So that's how the face is going to look. Okay. So what we want to do is we're going to put glue on the entire back part of this, and we want to make sure that we get that glue out to the edge nicely so that it looks nice and clean. And I'm going to spread that out with my finger, I think. The inside here, just want to make sure that you're getting good coverage so that you don't have any part of this peeling up. Okay, and again, there are some of these parts here where I've gone a little too thin. And I'm going to do one more lap around the perimeter just so that I can kind of spread this out to the edges. Okay, just like that. And all we want to do is just make sure that we're getting this nice and lined up with the cutouts behind the vellum. And then the rest of that should just kind of fall into place. I'm also running my finger along the edges here to make sure that those are nice and flush. And I'm just going to put this down on my surface and push down. Okay, and again, we can go in and fix any parts that may be like peeling off because maybe we didn't get enough glue out to the edge or something like that. But so far, it looks pretty darn good to me. I got a little bit of glue that kind of came seeping in. Okay, so as you can see here, it is a little challenging to get that glue in all those little spots. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some glue down here, grab my spatula, or if you have your pick-me-up tool, grab that too, and just begin kind of working that glue right up to the edge. And then just working little sections, you know, just one little section at a time, holding it down until you've got a nice, beautiful seam there. Okay, it should be nice and flush. I mean, if you can get this all to sit meticulously and perfectly the first time around, then I want to hire you to come do my assembly videos because it's not easy. So we just kind of have to go in and fix some things here and there just to make sure that everything looks nice and pretty. So don't feel bad if it doesn't look right initially. You can always go in and there's little things you can do to fix things along the way. Okay, so there's another fly. Get out of here, fly. I do like using my, I like using my razor blade for this because it is thinner, but this works too if you don't have a razor blade handy. Okay, so I got that glue in there and I'm just pushing down. This thing is nice and structurally sound now, so I can really just kind of squeeze it with my fingers and it'll hold nicely. Okay, and that seam looks pretty good. And let's just finish this up with this little section here that didn't glue down very well. Okay, and just push and hold that in place. And as you can see, that seam looks great. And there we go. Nice, beautiful seam. Okay, and you can repeat that process on the other side. And I'm going to do that really quick, just to kind of show you and hopefully give you a little more confidence when you're working on these projects, because, you know, it's not like, I don't know, like I said, if you can get it right the first time, then I applaud you. And maybe, you know what, maybe you're using tape instead of glue, and in that case, you know what, for something like this, I can't really see how tape would make it any easier, because tape is nice and straight and sometimes difficult to curve. So, but I'm okay with this because I know that it's going to hold, I know it's going to look beautiful, and I know it's not going to come apart. So, and I could probably do the same thing down here as well. Another little area that just didn't get enough glue. But that looks great. Okay, so we can flip this over and just repeat our process here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually start on the inside. And I'll put thicker amounts of glue on the inside so it doesn't dry as fast. I'm not that worried about it spilling out as long as I don't put too much. And then that way I can work the perimeter and really get that glue out to the edge. Spread that out all the way to the edge. If you don't want to get your fingers all gluey, I don't blame you, because it does kind of get messy, but it will make for a nicer looking project. So don't afraid to get your hands dirty. Okay, and again, we just want to lay this down. I guess I'm kind of, this time around, just looking at this little angle here at the top where the two ears meet. Okay, and I'm going to push that down on my surface. There we go. And again, if necessary, just go around and add a little extra glue on the sides here just to clean that up. Okay, but overall, that looks great. Okay, and all that's really left to do at this point is decorate our owl with some eyeballs. So I have these, I ink these in a brown color, and these are going on vellum, right on the vellum. So we don't need too much glue. We want it to dry quickly and without kind of leaking out. So I'm just gonna make sure that I get that nice and centered. There we go. And get our next one on here. I'm just going to go ahead and dab that a little bit so it doesn't come spilling out. Try to keep these little cutouts at the same angle so that our owl's eyes look symmetrical. There we go. So that's cute. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and that just leaves our little panels here. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add glue in some of these other areas here that maybe are not so perfect, but this panel is going to get glued down right on here. Okay, and because I already trained it, you can see how nicely it sits on there. Okay, now this paper is a little bit thicker, so I don't need to worry about it warping all that much. But what I do want to focus on is making sure that I'm getting that glue out to the very top and the very bottom so that it doesn't come peeling away. Okay, And just align that nicely with the hole that's already there for our handle. And make sure that you've got it nice and centered. Have a nice border going all the way around. Okay, top and bottom have enough glue there to make sure that doesn't come peeling off. Okay, and then we grab our other panel, which we've again trained, and we're going to glue that right on the side there. Nice and centered. Again, making sure that I'm getting that glue out to the very top and bottom. And I'm going to spread that thin so it doesn't bleed out. Okay. And do your best to get that nice and centered on the side there. That looks great. Okay, and again, just I would mostly apply pressure on the top and bottom. The rest of it should kind of stick, and that looks great. And again, these little panel pieces, you can go in and touch these up with extra glue if you need to as well. Okay, so there is one of the sides all done up. Okay, and all that's really left, I'm not going to do the other side on video because it's basically what I just did. So there's our owl, and what we're going to do, we have these little donuts here. Okay, one of these donuts is going to go on the outside here, and then the other one is going to get glued to the inside, just like that. Okay, and then we're going to put a little handle on this thing, so we'll do that here in just 1 second. So off camera here, I put the other panels on. I also just spent a few minutes going in and cleaning up some of the edges using that little technique where I take my spatula, or in this case, I did grab my razor blade and kind of clean that up a little bit. And then all that's really left to do is take, and this is just floral wire here, and we're going to just kind of create a little handle. And I actually kind of creased this at the length that I think would be perfect. It's about 12 inches, 12 and a half roughly. Okay, so you want to just grab some wire cutters and just cut that off. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to stick it through one side here and just bend it up. Okay, and just kind of like that, and gently arch it. And this looks like it's going to need a little bit more arc. Okay, let's stick that through the other side. That's why we kind of got that reinforcement there so that we don't go messing up our paper. And I need to bend that first before I pop it in there. Okay, just grab it right in there and just bend it up. It's really pretty heavy gauge wire, so I don't need to worry about like connecting it or anything. It's going to hold in place very nicely for us. Okay, and I think we may need to kind of arch that up a little bit more. It's kind of pulling this out a little more than I want it to. Okay, so there is our little handle. Okay, and just kind of bring that out just a tad. Okay, and then our little leaf here is going to get glued on right about here. Okay, so I know that initially I said about 12 inches. I ended up cutting off about another 1.5 inches of this floral wire. I didn't like how tall it was, and it was kind of pulling the thing out of place a little bit. I think that about 10.5 inches is probably plenty. Okay, and then we're just going to take our little leaf and gonna actually, probably you wanna use hot glue for this, but I'm gonna take this guy and I am gonna glue him right to the handle here. Now this is paper, so shouldn't have a problem gluing this right on there. Okay, he's just got a little, nice little maple leaf. I think that's a maple, I believe it is. Nice little leaf hanging right off the little handle here. And then this little piece here, I'm just gonna take that and I'm gonna put glue on the back side of this and then a little bit on either side. And I'm just gonna go ahead and spread that out a little bit with my spatula and just cover it up like that. Okay, and then you can kind of push these down and sandwich it in between the little handle there. Just make sure that you get glue out to the extremities here of this little piece, and that should hold it in place for you nicely. And there is our completed owl bag / luminary. Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.